A pizza pie recipe is something that I've been wanting to do for a while, so why not today? I'm not sure which videos are going to go up first. I've been making pie versions of classic recipes, and today it's pizza. Here I have a 9-inch pie crust. You can use store-bought, but I'm using my homemade pie crust as usual. I am using 1.5 8-ounce blocks of low moisture part skim mozzarella. The other half is in the refrigerator to keep it cold because it's easier to grate when it's cold. But here I have 1 block. I have in total 3 ounces of pepperoni, but that's about half, so maybe 1.5 ounces. Some tomato sauce, some spinach, 3/4 of a pound that I microwaved on high, covered for about, I'd say 10 minutes, and then a pound of red onion that I peeled and microwaved on high, covered for 10 minutes as well. Honestly, you can use whatever type of sauce you want, and if it's really flavorful, you probably don't need to add anything. And even though this is good, I'm just going to add a little bit more. I have a 1/4 teaspoon each of black pepper, garlic powder, onion powder, and dry basil. So honestly, if you wanted to, I think you could mix everything in a big bowl and put it in the pie crust and bake it, and I think it would be fine. But usually, at least in the United States, a pizza has a crust, then cheese, or excuse me, it has a crust, then tomato sauce, then cheese, then toppings. So I'm going to try to do that in the form of a pie. So here I have my pie crust, and even though usually sauce is right over the crust, I'm going to put a little bit of cheese just because the sauce is watery, and I think that putting the sauce directly on the crust will increase the likelihood that the crust is soggy. This pie crust is unbaked, it is raw. Well, if you're making your own or store-bought, just literally put it into the pie plate. So there, a little bit of cheese. Now I'm going to do some sauce. This is a 24-ounce container of tomato sauce. I honestly don't think I'm going to use it all. I will let you know how much I end up using. I put down some sauce and I spread it out. Now I'm going to take some of my spices and mix them together. I'm just going to lightly sprinkle them over the sauce. Like I said, the sauce is really flavorful, but I just want to show you that if you want to, you can add to your pizza pie. Also, if your sauce really isn't that sweet, and you like it sweet, I'm sure you could sprinkle in some sugar. Even though I do have a sweet tooth, I'm not going to add any sugar to this. I had enough sugar recently. So now I'm going to put down a layer of pepperoni. I don't want to have this completely full. I'm going to leave a little bit of a gap between the pieces of pepperoni because I do want the cheese from the layers to be able to melt together. Because I think if you have a super thick layer of pepperoni or vegetables or whatever you're using, and the cheese from the top can't melt down into the cheese on the bottom, the pie might not stick together as well. And that's why I'm definitely putting down a good amount of pepperoni, but as you can see, there are a few gaps here and there. Now for the vegetables. If you're using spinach, it's important to make sure that it is at least slightly drained, because if it is wet, when you cut into this, your pizza pie is going to be very wet. It's going to be runny. It's going to be a lot of water. Whatever vegetables you use, I would definitely cook them first, whether you saute them in a little bit of oil or you cook them in the microwave. I don't think they would have enough time to cook on their own. So I really think, like I said, you need to cook them a little bit beforehand. If you're using canned mushrooms and or canned something, I don't think you have to worry about it. But if you're using fresh, and you definitely should cook them. I used about half of the spinach and half of the red onion. And now I'm going to take a spatula and press everything down. Put that over here. And now for some cheese. Then add another layer of sauce, along with a bit of extra spices if you're using them. I finished putting down the second layer of sauce and then the second layer of pepperoni. I measured what I took out of the jar. It was just over 12 ounces, so you would need 12 ounces of pasta sauce, at least. Now I'm going to put on the rest of the spinach. Like I said, try not to get a lot of water into this pizza pie. You don't want to cut into a watery pie. You can see there's more cheese here. I grated the extra half a block of mozzarella that I had. Honestly, if you don't want to use mozzarella, I think you could use a lot of things. You will just need 12 ounces. I think mozzarella and Parmesan would be good. Excuse me. Mozzarella and cheddar. You could do a lot of things. Oh, and the second layer of sauce, I did sprinkle it with some of my seasonings as well. I'm going to put on my vegetables. And I'm going to sprinkle on a little bit of cheese. But just like with my other savory pies, I'm going to top this pizza pie with a cheese and sour cream topping. And now for the final layer of cheese on the top. Just to clarify, I used one 8-ounce block of cheese in the pie, and then I'm going to use half of an 8-ounce block for the topping. Although you could definitely just add cheese to the top, I'm going to use the topping that I use in my other savory pies, like my tomato pie and my eggplant pie. My special topping consists of 4 ounces of shredded cheese, or half of an 8-ounce block, along with a 1/4 cup, 60 grams of sour cream. And if you want, about 1/8 of a teaspoon each of black pepper, onion powder, and garlic powder. I know that the idea of spreading a paste of shredded cheese and sour cream on top of a pizza pie or a tomato pie or something like that might seem a bit odd. So like I said, if you want to, you can definitely just add the cheese. However, the sour cream adds a tanginess and it melts in with the cheese to create a delicious topping that honestly I think is what really makes these savory pies delicious. As you can see, I put the sour cream and cheese topping onto the pizza pie in, for lack of a better way of describing them, globs or dollops. That's because if you put it all in one space, in one area, it's going to be very hard to spread out. Well, I'm going to now spread it out as best as I can. Although it takes a bit of patience to get the topping spread out, once you're done, the pie is ready for the oven. My pizza pie just came out of the oven. It was in at 350 uncovered for 40 minutes. And now I'm going to add some pepperoni to my pizza pie. Although you could probably add the pepperoni to the top before baking the pizza pie, I decided to put it on right when it came out of the oven because I didn't want to run the risk of the pepperoni burning. If you do what I did, make sure that you add the pepperoni slices while the cheese is still hot so that the pepperoni can stick to the top of the pie. This looked absolutely phenomenal, so I couldn't wait to dig in. In all honesty, this pizza pie recipe was one of the best recipes that I have created in quite some time. I know that I've said that before, but this was truly delicious. I was truly amazed by just how much flavor this had. I think this was so flavorful because the toppings that would normally form a relatively thin layer on top of an average, somewhat flavorless crust were actually really thick. The vast majority of this pie was a pizza toppings. The sauce that I used was a sweet tomato and basil sauce, and I think that that's another big reason as to why I like this so much. The sweetness of the sauce contrasted with the saltiness and fattiness of the cheese and the pepperoni very, very well. The pepperoni added a lot of flavor, as did the vegetables. The pie crust itself adding a lot of extra buttery flavor that isn't very common in pizza, but actually goes very well with pizza toppings, as I so discovered. My only complaint is that, as you can see here, there's a bit of liquid at the bottom of the pizza pie. I think it's because the spinach was still a bit on the watery side. But even though there's a bit of liquid at the bottom of the pie, the crust didn't really taste soggy. So honestly, like I said, I was very pleased with how this turned out. But next time, I will definitely make sure that the spinach is very dry before adding it to the pie. I might also try par baking an empty pie crust at 350 for about 3 or 4 minutes, taking it out of the oven, adding the first layer of cheese, and then putting it back in for 2 to 3 minutes. That's what I do when I make my tomato pie, and I think that a layer of melted cheese on the bottom helps to protect the crust from getting soggy. Criticisms aside, this pizza pie recipe was one of my best, so I hope you give it a try. As always, thanks for watching. See you next time. Bye.